Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.
Steve Orme here, the British Theatre Guide's editor in the Midlands. The main production at Derby Theatre in spring 2017 is Betrayal by Harold Pinter. It's being directed by Lekan Lawal, and it's his first production since he joined the theatre as part of the Regional Theatre Young Directors Scheme. Shortly we'll be hearing from three of the cast: Ben Addis, Kemi-Bo Jacobs and Philip Correia. But first, Lekan Lawal says it's an exciting prospect to be directing his first main stage production.
We've known since I started here. I started here about 15 months ago, so I'm on an 18-month placement. And since Sarah Brigham, who's the artistic director here, offered me the position, we've known that I'm going to direct something at the theatre. So I've been in the position that I've known that it's coming, if you see what I mean. And I've also got to know everyone who works here. So it's been incredibly supportive because, you know, I know all the people who work in production, I know all the people who work in marketing, learning, etc. And so it's kind of surrounding yourself with a team in a theatre that's really supportive has meant it's obviously daunting directing a first main house show, but it's not as daunting as it otherwise would be.
And has it helped having Sarah as your mentor for the past few months?
Yeah, absolutely. What's happened is that in all of the main house shows she's directed, I've been able to assist her on those. And then I've also, outside of that, been able to shadow her and learn how she runs the building. And so the learning theatre model is unique. So kind of being able to access that and understand how that's put together from all elements has been really great. But also being able to shadow her on the meetings that she goes to and some of the senior management stuff that she has to do as part of her job as artistic director has been really invaluable, just because as a freelancer you don't often get that opportunity to be in a building and kind of see how it works, and a lot of those skills are going to be transferable. So
looking at Pinter's play, how does it differ from some of his early works?
So I think this was kind of in the middle of his kind of career, so it was 1978. So I think that the earlier stuff, you know, this idea of like things, you know, the big pauses and it being very dark and very cryptic, I think is part of his earlier phase. And I think he was going through a decade of memory plays like Old Times, and those memory plays kind of were exploring how we remember things and identity through memory and how we misremember things. And I guess out of that middle section of his career, this is one of the last plays out of that section before, as he got older, he got a lot more overtly political, for want of a better way of putting it. So in that respect, I think it's just really exciting because he's at the cusp of change as an artist. And so going from being an unknown to becoming successful to being an associate of the National to writing this for the National stage, after being an associate there for like several years and having worked on several plays there, it's just an interesting moment in his career. And it's really exciting to explore that play because of that.
So is there menace and tension in this play?
There is definitely tension. Less menace in an overt way, but I think that there's the kind of the pressure that subterfuge and deception kind of puts on people is kind of very palpable. So it's that thing of a lot of what we're seeing in the kind of text and what's written is skimming the surface of much more complicated emotions happening underneath, as is often the case. But the way in which he uses relatively accessible and sparse dialogue to convey very deep and complicated thoughts and emotions is really, it's amazing. It's an amazing piece of writing.
So how do you regard Pinter as a playwright?
That seems like a trick question. He was an excellent playwright. And I think what's most exciting to me about Pinter is that he's a complete artist in lots of ways. You know, he trained as an actor, he directed, he wrote plays, he wrote screenplays, he wrote radio dramas. He was in the position that I think is kind of enviable and essential of being able to see the theatre-making process and the story-making process and storytelling process from lots of different angles. And I think what makes him such an exciting writer is the fact that he was able to experience all of those facets of how people talk and observe those from a theatrical and film language, but also just, I think he's a great observer of the way in which and the rhythm in which people talk, and being able to reproduce that his dialogue is second to none.
So will Betrayal be groundbreaking in any way at all?
I think that groundbreaking is an interesting turn of phrase. I think I think it's really interesting when playwrights become part of our canon and part of our received kind of wealth of text that people know. Playwrights become part of a thing that people are kind of is established and people respect and understand and revere and study. I think it's really interesting when you revisit those plays now, how and why you tell them. So I can't say that it will be groundbreaking, but I can definitely say that we've spent a lot of time interrogating the most true to the play, but also exciting for the audience way of exploring the text.
So this is your first major production at Derby Theatre. Mm-hmm. How have the cast accepted you as a first-time director?
They've been great. You're going to have to ask them. I think anything that I say is subjective, I'm sure. But I think what's been really useful is that we had a few days R&D before we got into research and development, before we got into rehearsal. So we had a few days of kind of bonding and getting to know each other and playing around with the text and playing around with exercises in a kind of low-pressured environment, which I think has served us massively in coming into the room together and working together. They're incredibly talented and they've been working extremely hard, so they've been a joy to work with, and it's just about getting to the finishing line now, because there's a lot more to do before we get to the end. But it's exciting, and I think what they're finding and what they're creating for an audience is going to be really exciting.
Have you found things in the text that maybe some other directors don't bring out?
I couldn't say that I have, because I haven't seen every production of Betrayal or any production of Betrayal, so that would be lying. I think that I've just been trying to find all the things in the text that Pinter would want to have been brought out, and not trying to find things that he hasn't put there. I think it's just kind of trying to respond as truthfully as we can to a piece as it's kind of presented to us, and look at how in doing that we can respond to now as well, and where we are now. It's kind of meeting him where he is, but also finding somewhere for the audience that is giving us a reason to tell the story now and explore that tale now.
You're on the Regional Theatre Young Directors Scheme here at Derby Theatre, so what have you learned from being on that?
Well, I think that's how I ordered this position, so that's part of my 18-month placement. I think what I've learned is that Derby Theatre is really cool. But more extensively, I think it's really interesting how it sits in the kind of regional landscape in the Midlands, but also in the country. I think nationally what we're doing in terms of artist development within Good Company, the learning theatre model, and how we work with the university, but also how we work with local young people and adults, and the kind of commitment to emerging not being a kind of age, but just where you are in your career has been really exciting. And I think that element of being in Derby and kind of learning how the building works, as well as assisting on the shows, has kind of given me really holistic grounding to kind of keep working as a freelancer when my 18 months is up. So that's been a real gift. So
what's next for you personally after Betrayal?
So I've got a couple more months here where I'm finishing off my placement. I'm also developing some new work which the theatre supported me in kind of seed funding for. And I'm also working on a project called the Old Vic 12 with the Old Vic Theatre, which is 12 artists who are collaborating to develop 3 new plays. So that's what I'll be spending the summer doing after I finish.
Ben, I hear that you've been waiting to have a part in Betrayal for 15 years. So what's that all about?
Well, I read the play, what seems like a very long time ago. I think when I was doing A-level theatre, and we had to find bits to do for monologues and things like that for our exams. And I read the play then, I think a bit of it, and then I came back to it when I was at university, and I wanted to direct a Pinter play then, which ended up being a different one. But I think I reread bits of it then, and I just really loved it. I thought it was very funny. I like the darkness of it. I think that particularly appeals to me as a sort of 17, 18-year-old. You know what teenagers are like. And yeah, I just from that moment I thought I'd really love to be in it one day. But it's obviously too young. And now I'm not.
You're playing Robert, who is betrayed by his wife, Emma. So was that the part you wanted?
I think when I'd read the play before, I thought both parts were great. There's lots of things about Jerry that are really fun to play. And yeah, I think I thought, because I've done sort of little workshops and things on the play before, and I think that was probably the part that I naturally gravitate to, that I find a bit easier to key into. And I like the fact that you talk about Robert being betrayed. Don't want to give away too much, obviously, if people are going to come and see the play. But there are things about Robert that we only find out as the show progresses that I think make him quite complex and intriguing to try and find out, and try and empathise with his decision making is really fun.
So what do you bring to the role?
What do I bring to the role? That's an odd question. I'm sort of tall and dark-haired. I don't really know. I think you'd either have to ask Lekan or our director or the audience after they've seen the play. I don't really know.
Is Lekan doing anything different with it from what you might have expected?
Lekan's doing lots of things. He's a very intelligent man and has lots and lots of ideas. And yeah, I think our audience can expect to see quite a different production to what they might be used to when they think of a Harold Pinter play. But again, I don't want to say too much because there's lots of reveals that people will see when they come and see it. So yeah, I think I better leave it there.
So what about some of your previous roles? Have they prepared you at all to play Robert?
Well, I think it's all right to say that Betrayal is a play with a time structure that is quite unusual. I don't think that's given away too much. We move through time in quite a different way from most plays. And the last bit of theatre that I did was in Manchester at the Royal Exchange, and that was an adaptation of a Sarah Waters novel called The Night Watch, and that travels backwards in time. It goes backwards scene by scene. And so I suppose that was quite good preparation for just working from one scene to the next, being able to work out where exactly your character is in their story in a non-chronological way. So just being able to quite quickly access, all right, this is where we are at the moment, at this point of the story. A bit more like working in TV, I suppose, sometimes when you have to film things out of chronological order. Yeah, it's a bit more like that. So hopefully, having done that last year, that will have prepped me a bit. But we'll soon see, we'll find out.
So what are the challenges of the role as far as you're concerned?
With Robert, I suppose it's working out, without sounding like a sort of pretentious actor now, without working out what his motivations are, what drives him to make the decisions that he does, what forces him into certain situations, working out, because the play is quite ambiguous in lots of ways. There's a lot of options there that you can take. So you could say, either he knows that now, or he's decided that now, or he's worked that out, or he hasn't worked that out. There's a lot of options to play with. And I think a lot of it is about trying to work out for ourselves where we are in that, within the story.
Kemi-Bo, you play Emma, who's betrayed by her husband by having an affair with Jerry. So is that a challenging role for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think any part that you take on is a challenge because you've been asked to play someone that isn't yourself or go through things that you may not have experienced and develop an understanding and an empathy for that character and remove any sense of judgment from that as well, to be able to play it with truth and integrity, I think. But it has been challenging, it is challenging, and I guess that's what makes it exciting and I think keeps it interesting for you as well. I'm working with a really brilliant bunch of people, an extremely talented cast, which makes it easier, and also you can be slightly braver in the room as well and try different things, which is great.
Does that put you under any pressure to raise your game to their level, as it were?
I don't think in a negative sense you feel an intimidation by that, but yes, you just, I guess, through osmosis, you are better because that level is in the room. But yeah.
So Emma goes through all sorts of emotions: love, desire, guilt, fear, grief. So is it difficult bringing out each one of those characteristics?
Whenever we experience something, we don't say, I'm going to use this emotion now to respond to this. It should just come and it should just happen. So I think the beauty of a well-written script and a play like Betrayal, and I think with a director like Lekan and a cast as well, that actually you just respond to what's been offered to you, and those emotions and those feelings come without you kind of monitoring what they are and filtering in what you think you should be using and what you would like to eliminate from that moment. But of course you do you have a rehearsal period where you explore those emotions and those themes and decide whether or not you think at that time this character is feeling that or wanting to emote that. But when you say it like that, it makes it sound really hard to bring all those emotions into just, a line or a sentence.
It sounds as though it's a play that calls for great chemistry between all the actors. So is that chemistry evident as far as you're concerned?
I think it's important that there is electricity there, definitely, because so much... I don't know a lot of Pinter's work, but certainly with this play and with the characters that we're bringing to the stage, bringing to life in this production, everything's very beneath the surface. So they're not hugely expressive about how they're feeling, and are often saying the opposite to how they're feeling. So there has to be an undercurrent, and that undercurrent has to be very strong, I think, and very palpable on stage, and between the characters. So I think Lekan's done a really good job, and the company done a really good job in, I think, bringing together a cast that works well in that sense, and where there is a chemistry and a generosity as well towards one another.
So how does the character of Emma compare with other roles that you've played? Is it the most challenging that you've done?
I haven't got to the end of it yet, and I don't know how to answer that question, because I think that I'm still in a process. Obviously, we're still, we haven't presented it yet, we're still rehearsing. And I always think that it's only looking back that you can make that decision on things. Yes, it's challenging, but I think every job is challenging, and it should be, and often for different reasons. But I certainly feel like I've been asked, there's been a lot asked of me on this job, and I'm really pleased about the opportunity and to be in a space where I feel as though I'm doing things that I may not have done before. And that's the great thing about being an actor. I think it being creative is saying, I'm happy to try out new things and to go on that journey with the company, which I think we are doing well.
Philip, you're playing Jerry, so how do you see him? Is he a desperate, needy character, as some people regard him?
Well, he's obviously charming, handsome, and dangerous, like all my characters. But I think he's quite a romantic character in some ways, not necessarily in a traditional Valentine's Day romance, but I think he likes to see himself as a romantic hero. I think he's quite affable and charming and able to bluff his way through lots of situations that are quite difficult, which he finds himself in throughout the play. I think he's also somebody that doesn't like dealing with difficult situations like many of us do. He is confronted by many tricky emotional entanglements and provocating situations in the play, and his usual method of dealing with them is to not deal with them.
Sounds like a complex part, so has it been difficult for you to get into that?
Well, I'm trying to play it exactly like me, which is helping, which is always a good start, I think. It is very difficult. I panicked for most of the first few weeks that I had the script, trying to work out what it was about and what I should do. But generally, I think, if you just listen to everybody else and stand where you're meant to and say your lines at the right time, you're halfway there.
So was there a light bulb moment when it all suddenly became clear to you?
I basically accosted our director, Lekan, and said, why have you given me this part? I don't understand. And he said, well, I think that one of the reasons we'd like you to do it is that we'd like you to bring some of the lighter elements that you brought in the auditions to the part. And that clicked with me a little bit, because then suddenly I realised where he wanted me to go with it. It's quite, on the surface, it could be viewed as quite a cold or quite difficult play. I don't think it is. I think it's very funny and I think it's very emotional. But I think probably because of my naivety and ignorance of Pinter, I assumed it was probably colder and more difficult than it is. So concentrating on the lighter moments and the moments of levity amongst the characters really unlocked a lot of the playing time for us, I think.
Talking of naivety, Jerry has been described as a naive character who doesn't realise he's being manipulated. Does that come out in your production?
I suppose it's everything is interpretation, isn't it? And I probably haven't interpreted it that way, in that I think probably Jerry, like many of us, knows a huge amount of home truths but doesn't necessarily want to deal with them, which is actually quite an experienced, quite intelligent method. It doesn't necessarily, by intelligent, I don't mean that it's successful or positive, but it takes a remarkable amount of self-knowledge and intelligence to be able to block things within oneself. And a naive character might view situations in a more a less thoughtful or educated way, and this character is extremely educated and extremely well read, and I think he's bringing a lot of his decision making. He's bringing an intelligence that he's using to block and dispel that naivety, if that makes sense.
So, after studying this play in rehearsals for a few weeks, have you changed your opinion of Pinter as a playwright?
Well, I thought he was good, and now I also think he was good. He is good. So no, probably not. I think the one thing that changes automatically when you're in the play is knowing that you sort of can do it. I think probably before the play I thought, I probably can't do that. It's a bit hard. Probably want to get a good actor. But now that I'm having done it for a few weeks, it feels like, oh yeah, it's a play with, cues and lights and all the rest of it, and we're kind of used to that. So I suppose that takes the slight intimidation out of it. But of course, as soon as there's an audience there, I'll be absolutely terrified as ever.
Betrayal runs at Derby Theatre from the 17th of March until the 1st of April.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.